Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, Canammissing Project. Copyrighted edition for our video channel. Thanks for being here today. And I'm blessed that I have this channel still. Thank you for being here. And right off the start, I got something today in the mail that was shook my base pretty hard. And I'm going to read to you what was in the note to me. It says, "Dear Dave and villagers, it's been 20 days since my husband and I lost our son on November 12th. There is nothing to ready a parent for the shock. Our son was 26. I miss him every day, as you do with your son, Ben. Hugs. Enjoying the views of Montana. I'm enclosing my print of my painting, which won the California Duck Stamp. I'd be honored for you, as you're from the state. Keep it up. Keep up the wonderful work on missing people and other subjects. In the near future, I will seek out NAMI. Take care. Diane Ford and family." And this is what Diane sent me. And you talk about a beautiful painting. My gosh. Just in the last year, when I've taken the time away to clear my own mind. Thank you, Diane. It's gorgeous. I've gone up to the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and I've just hung out on some of the rivers and creeks there. It's really the first time in my life I've seen so many ducks here in Montana. They're beautiful. But to Diane and her family about losing her son, I understand the agony of that, as do many of you, losing relatives and friends during a stressful time in our lives. And there's really no words that can ease that pain. Companionship, being around others, and there's something about being around others who have suffered a similar loss, probably because they can relate. For me, it's being around, talking to one of the people in my life is Alan Atadero, who lost his son. Alan's one of those very compassionate souls that cares about others. And when I started to investigate his son's disappearance, I'll never forget the first time we met in this restaurant. And he hadn't seen a case file I put together on his son. And some of the photos and things I had been given by law enforcement agencies, he hadn't even seen. But it was like a blessing from above. To meet Alan. I can remember when we sat down and talked. My son was alive. Ben was fine. Ben was the one that orchestrated that first movie. But still, I can remember being around Alan and feeling deep sadness for what he had gone through. Just like everyone that loses someone, a child. Losing a child is just different. I pray that you never go through it. So enough about that. Talk about something that's just got me fired up just recently. That is these mass thefts from stores. Gets me hugely irate. And it's because of certain elements in our society. Let me just talk about California for a second. California decriminalized grand theft. Grand theft used to be the stealing of something $400 or more. And they changed it to $950. And then a series of district attorneys in California, namely San Francisco and LA County, decided that they didn't want to prosecute any more petty thefts. That means anything under $950. So what started was people going into a series of drugstores in San Francisco and just stepping in and blatantly and obviously stealing things right in front of others. They didn't care, and walking out of the store with a bag load of merchandise, knowing they weren't going to get prosecuted as long as it was under $950. What happened to that? Subsequently, it hurt everybody because over 10 drugstores in San Francisco closed. So elderly people, people in need that had to get their medications, suddenly it got enormously difficult because drugstores didn't want to do business in San Francisco because they couldn't make a profit. Can't make a profit when people are stealing all your merchandise off the store shelves. Then in Los Angeles, they decided to take it up a notch. And they started en masse, like 20, 30, 80 people enter a big department store like Nordstrom's and go in, and you multiply 80 times almost $1,000 each, which is what they were stealing. That's an $80,000 heist. This morning, an LA Police Department detective was interviewed on one of the news channels. And if you didn't see it, you're on the wrong news channel. And what this guy said was the police are adamantly compelled and obligated and love to go out and catch these criminals. And the other day, they apprehended 14 of them after some great police work. And he said, the public doesn't understand this. These are serious offenders, multiple felons, and we're putting them in jail, and immediately they're getting sent back out. Why? Because of bail reform legislation in California. Meaning that they can't hold people for bail anymore based on new laws. Well, guess what, folks? Criminals know that. So they don't want to be held in jail, knowing that they aren't going to be. Just go out and commit another crime, and they'll get put in, and they'll go back out. In the past, we had what was called own recognizance release. And that's, let's say you were a very minor offender, you had a job, you had an address where you had been at for several months, you're a person in the community that could be established, etc. You had all this criteria that somebody from the OR section in the jail went through with you, validated who you were, and you would be let out of jail on your own recognizance. Now, beforehand, if it was a felony, let's say you assaulted somebody with a pipe, then the person in OR would go through it again because of the type of crime and the danger involved in the crime. Then there would possibly be bail placed on you getting out. Now, that didn't mean you didn't get out. That only meant that if you wanted to get out before your arraignment, you had to post bail. Now, arraignment had to be within 3 business days. So sometimes people would sit in jail for 5 days because of a weekend. So what? So what? If you can't get out of jail because you can't post bail, now it doesn't matter. You will get out immediately. Now, what does this do to our society? All you have to do is start paying attention. What's sick is that it's running the police departments ragged. The person I saw interviewed today wasn't a police administrator, wasn't a police chief. Do you know why? Because remember when I told you many months ago that police chiefs are political appointees? They aren't chosen by citizens. They're chosen by politicians to run police departments. Entirely different than a sheriff. The sheriff is elected by the citizens in the county. And sheriffs have a stance about law enforcement that is unwavering. And the best I've seen of that lately on a national level is the LA County Sheriff, Villanueva. There was one city police chief that was very vocal, and he ended up retiring. That was the Detroit police chief. He was a black man who called it like it was. And he was an outstanding police chief. And he thwarted a lot of Detroit crime. But now, you're not seeing any of these police chiefs in LA say anything because they don't want to lose their jobs. Politics. But this police officer that went up there, this detective, member of a police association, they can't do anything to him. So, during that review process on your own recognizance, they look at your job history, your stability, your contacts in the community, who will vouch for you, your arrest record, things like that. Doesn't exist anymore. Now, one thing that the feds could do if they wanted to, but you're saying that this administration won't let them do it, is they could start monitoring social sites, because that's where these people are organizing. These 80 people, they don't come out of the blue and just automatically meet at Nordstrom's and let's do this. No, it's organized. And the feds could help with this. There's also a crime that all of these people are committing that's a felony, even if they're stealing less than $950 in California. That's conspiracy. News isn't talking about it. But when two people or more work together to commit a crime, it's a conspiracy, that's a felony. Even if the crime they're committing is a misdemeanor, working together to commit the crime is a felony. And they could be put in jail for this. And they could be a convicted felon for this. But you don't see any talk about this right now. Why? Because the DAs in these liberal counties don't want to charge it. They don't want to charge anybody with anything, it appears. They just want to see the destruction of our communities and our tax base. Because folks, these businesses in our community support the local community through taxes. And that is destroying our tax base in these areas. Today, I saw an interview with Mayor Lightfoot from Chicago. She said some things that just blew my mind. So, in the past, the multitude of crime was being done in the south side of Chicago. A lot of black on black, killing type crime, gang activity. Well, all of a sudden it started to appear in the Miracle Mile downtown. And it's gotten serious. She blamed the local businesses for the crime. She's blaming the victims for the crime. She's saying, oh, well, they need to have guards in their businesses. And they need to have cameras in their businesses. And that'll thwart the crime. That's hilarious. These people wear masks. Well, because it's proper now to wear a mask. So now they wear a mask and no one's going to think anything. And they go into a store and they pull out their pipe and they start smashing displays. They don't care. And what is one security guard going to do when 20 people run in with pipes? Nothing. Mayor Lightfoot has done nothing about the crime on the south side of Chicago. I've told you before, and I'll make it blatantly clear again. Those crimes in those areas of Chicago where gangs are running the streets there could get stopped quickly. And if you wanted to stop it, you're going to have a series of shootings, thousands of arrests, and you're going to get a lot of people claiming police brutality. You're going to get people claiming unlawful use of force. That's their defense these days. And there's going to be a lot of shootings. Why is there going to be a lot of shootings? Because you're going to put high-profile U.S. Marshals, drug enforcement agents, ATF agents in those streets in Chicago. President Trump offered to do this. The mayor said no. Why? Because she didn't want to deal with all of the claims that would be bound to happen. When you have these agents confronting armed gang members in brutally high crime areas, and they're armed and they pull a gun, there's going to be a shooting. Or when they resist arrest, there's going to be force used. It's going to happen. They don't want that. Yet the victims in all this are the people who own the residents, the good people of Chicago that are trying to live in these crime-infested neighborhoods. Do they want the police there? Heck yeah, they want the police there. Talk to the businesses. And if your channel's not talking to those businesses, you're on the wrong channel. Because I watch these businesses get interviewed all the time. They're begging for the police to come in. They want proactive enforcement. It's not happening. It's very sad. One more thing. When the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Lightfoot, said, well, why don't these businesses have security guards? Hey, folks. Okay, they want to put a security guard in a business in downtown Chicago? Don't you think that that security guard should be armed? Now, what would happen if that security guard shot a couple of these people coming into the business? You think the mayor would like that? I don't think so. Now remember, Chicago, New York, have the strictest gun control measures in the United States. Yet Chicago has some of the worst gun crime in the world. Think about it. One other thing that I would encourage the police in Chicago to do is do proactive residence checks on parolees and probationers. Say, come by and visit and just talk to the people in the neighborhood. Person being a good citizen. Are they going to work? Are they carrying guns? Are they living where they're supposed to be living? Probably not. The biggest thing to me, leadership. I've worked for some great leaders in my time. As I told you before, I was hired by an individual named Chief Joseph McNamara. Came from New York City Police, and he became the chief in San Jose. And after he left, the department started to go downhill pretty rapidly. It's because McNamara ran that police department like you would want him to run the police department. He didn't take politics into account. He did what needed to be done. And in fact, he sent many of our people in New York to get trained with the street crimes unit in New York City. He was a great chief. Leadership, it's what's lacking today. I was watching an interview, and what was it, an interview? It was a discussion on Skype or something between Putin and Biden. And the US is concerned that Putin is going to invade a country, and Biden's nervous that he's going to do it. And so he had this meeting, and he basically asked him, you know, don't invade, or we're going to hold you accountable and we're going to sanction your country. Watching the discussion, as briefly as it was, on Russian TV, they showed the beginning. US TV, they didn't. And on Russian TV, why do you think that Putin allowed that? Because at the beginning, it was like watching somebody on Biden's side playing kindergarten checkers and watching Putin playing master's level chess. Yeah. Putin, being the head of one of the arguably most successful spy agencies in the world, the KGB, he ran it for many years. I don't care what you say about Putin. He's a brilliant man. He's a bad hombre, but a brilliant man. And he's playing the United States like a fiddle right now. Several months ago, Biden approved a pipeline going into Germany from Russia. And that gave away all of our negotiable skills. The Nord Stream pipeline. Now, he approved their pipeline, but he's not approving our pipelines. But Biden is an expert, top line, maybe the best in the world, at dealing with people, talking to people, and understanding how they're reacting to him. What I mean by that is back when I was in detectives, I went to several schools that dealt with how to interview somebody on the other side of the table, what to look for, mannerisms, eye movement, body characteristics, how it would change from the beginning to the end, what indicates somebody who is threatening something but would never do it, somebody who says something that's not true, somebody who is nervous, somebody who is afraid of you. There's all these little indicators that experts know when they're interviewing somebody. Putin is that expert. That's why he wanted that Zoom call, or however it was broadcasted between the two nations. He wanted to see Biden. He knows Biden's compromised. He knows he doesn't have all of his mental acuity at this point, and it's pretty obvious. When you see the stride of President Biden has changed since the time he came in office, that's a big clue. And just the way he speaks, the way he makes and says things that aren't true, how he says things about his past and his work history that aren't true. Putin knows. And Putin knows the U.S. is susceptible right now. China knows the U.S. is susceptible right now. North Korea knows the U.S. is susceptible right now. Iran knows the U.S. is susceptible right now. And why do you think all of these things are coming to a head right now? Because if I was them, I would be doing it too. But again, I don't have the same morals and values that these guys do. But if you look at the state of our country, and you look at the state of their world and what they're wanting to accomplish, oh yeah, go for it. Because really, they don't think that Biden has the ability to respond. And if you look at the way that our removal from Afghanistan was done, how bungled that was, and how we readily gave up probably the most strategically located Air Force base in the world, Bagram, and who's there now? Gee, the Chinese are there. Son of a gun. Yeah. That wasn't stupidity. That was strategic. They gave it to them. We gave it to them. We gave them hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars that were sitting on pallets. We gave them airplanes, helicopters. We gave up a lot of secrets there. It's hard to understand and not believe that some people in our government want to see us fail. Because to think that we're that incompetent is hard to believe. In my humble opinion, that is one of the few opinions you'll get out of me. Okay, let's go on to the letters and things. I want to tell you that this is a reminder. I get hundreds and hundreds of videos sent to me every month. I don't have the time to watch 1% of them from end to end. I don't. And I've asked you before, and I'll say it again, if you're going to send a video, do a short paragraph about why I need to watch this video. What does it have that would help me get to the end point on all this research? And give me timestamps. And if I don't get that, I'm probably not going to watch it. And as I've told you many times, I want to make this clear. 95, 98% of the videos online that people send in, they're not true. They're clickbait. They're designed to get you to watch them, get you upset, and get you to start talking about it. So you'll point other people to watch them, because the more time they're watched, the more time they're paid. People who've designed them. So unless what they're talking about has been vetted and names of the people are on the video and dates and locations are on the video, forget it. It's just designed to be a great story. Don't believe 95 to 98% of the videos you watch online about scary stories. And most of those never existed dealing with missing people in the woods until our research. And that's why. So the first letter. Dave, on September 6th in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, while elk hunting with my closest friend, as well as a copy of this perspective I'm going to forward to you. As I recall, it was our last day of the hunt. By the way, the Bob Marshall is located just a few miles from where I live. And I was in there for probably 10 days this summer. Awesome place. Our camp was set up along a ridge with a river at the bottom. And it was, I'm going to tell you later, it was a spotted bear river. It was a very wide river drainage with high sandy and rocky cliffs on each side. It was about 3 p.m. and we were heading back to camp, heading south along the ridge. The trail we were on was straight and never deviated more than 100 feet from the ridge. Now these guys sent me a picture and they said I could show it to you. So this is the valley. This is Spotted Bear River. I fished it. Lots of good fish in there. Farther you go back up into here, you better have your head on a swivel because a lot of bear. The trail we were on was straight, never deviated more than 10 feet from the ridge. We were keeping quiet while walking along the trail with our bows in hand. Not saying much when suddenly we were not on the trail anymore. Everything was silent and the woods seemed dark as well as very thick. The sun had been out and there were clear blue skies. We turned to each other and both related how dark it was. I said, "This doesn't feel right." My partner agreed. Our heads both felt cloudy. I'm not sure what better way to explain it, how we felt. We just couldn't seem to think clearly. We looked around us briefly to try and collect our bearings, but we could not see the trail or the ridge as the woods were so thick. We began to walk forward, and within 10 steps, we were back on the trail. The forest seemed to come alive with noises again. The sky was clear and blue. We could hear the river in the distance. Looking back where we had just come from, the thick woods were gone and the trail was clearly visible. As we looked at each other and we started discussing what just happened, finishing each other's sentence along the way, we both felt as though we had no idea how long we were in there. For me, it was almost as if I had woken up while we were in the thick woods, as I couldn't recall having walked off trail into them. My partner felt the same way. We talked about how cloudy everything had seemed, almost like there was a blur around the edges of our vision. What we found strangest of all was the fact that there was no way we could have stepped off the trail, as we were hiking along the ridge that never left our sight, and the trail was very easy to follow. I'm not sure what to make of it, but we had both agreed that it seemed like we had stepped into or out of a portal, or almost at least. Unfortunately, we had no luck hunting, but I know the experience will be burned into my mind forever. Thank you for everything you do. You're greatly appreciated. And then his partner, in a different email, sent this. He said, "Dave, my friend mentioned to me that he had emailed you regarding our elk hunting trip in September. I figured I'd quickly send you what I remembered. To quickly preface, I'm a 23-year-old male who has grown up spending an avid amount of time in the woods and backcountry hunting and fishing. I have a good mental compass allowing me to have little issues navigating the wilderness, as well as ample knowledge regarding wilderness safety and survival. Anyway, here's what my friend and I experienced on our elk hunt. A couple of things about this. First of all, they were elk hunting. Second of all, they were bow hunting. Bow hunters looking for elk have some of the highest rates of disappearing and never being found, just an FYI. Anyhow, it was September 6th. The weather was amazing. Sunny skies, steady breeze, and it was about 65 degrees. Perfect weather. We're in the Bob Marshall Wilderness, archery elk hunting, and it was our last day there. We had set up camp at a new location on the edge of an eroding river wall and figured it would be a nice walk to the end of the ridge, then back to camp before dark. We both grabbed our bows, bags, and tied our boots before leaving. To explain a little bit about where we were walking, like I said, we were camping on the edge of an eroding canyon with a river at the bottom of it. The timber was young, but there was hardly any underbrush, making it easy to walk along the canyon's edge and stop frequently to glass the adjacent hillside. We walked for about a half mile until the river split and the ridgeline ended. So we took a few photos, did some glassing, then decided to walk back to camp. Now, like I said, we were walking on the edge of this canyon for our entire walk out. We intended on walking the same exact game trail back to camp, so we did just that. My friend was walking in front of me, and I was looking at my feet, just trying to be quiet and stay on the trail. About halfway to camp, my friend stopped and said, "Wait, this doesn't look right." And as soon as I lifted my head up, it seemed as though the entire world just stopped. It was dead silent, there was no breeze, and there was an overwhelming sense of burden. The only way I can explain it would be to say the air was just thick, like you had sat in your car for 2 hours with it off, and the air is stagnant and gross. We both started to look around us and didn't see the river, or the canyon, or even the trail where we were walking. We were both standing on thick brush, surrounded by thicket with seemingly no path in or out. My partner and I both were in such disbelief. How does this even happen? It wasn't long before we decided to start tearing through the brush and try to get out. It was about 10 yards of thick brush before all of a sudden we were right back on the trail. I lifted my head after ducking out of the brush, looked at my partner, and then looked back. What I saw next honestly scared me. It was just the trail, right next to the canyon that we were walking on. The sun was shining, the wind was blowing, the water was rushing. No thicket, no brush, just the trail. I looked back to my partner and we both just looked at each other in absolute confusion. We both confirmed that we both had just experienced the same thing and talked a little about it on our way back to camp. We theorized a bit that night about what on earth happened to us, but still to this day we cannot wrap our minds around that event. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for what you're doing. God bless and Merry Christmas. That's pretty weird. What did happen that day, I wonder? Makes you think. Next story. Dave, before I go on. So the Bob Marshall Wilderness has some areas in it that are extremely remote. It take a couple-day ride on horseback to get to. And they have everything in there you can imagine that can kill you. So you got to be careful. These guys did the right thing, hunting together, smart, don't separate, better. And hopefully they were carrying some big pistols with them while they were archery hunting. Next letter. I'm a former first responder, and I did watch your video about the number of suicides in your area of Montana. Wow, that rocked my world too. After watching your video of your personal experiences in the woods, I decided to share a strange experience that happened to me in the forest. I'll try to keep this brief, as I know you get loads of mail. This took place in September of 2020, around the middle of the month, when it's still summer here in Tennessee. I was mountain biking in Bays, B-A-Y-S, Mountain Park near Kingsport, Tennessee. And I rode down into an area known as Kiner Hollow, K-I-N-E-R Hollow. After coming down from the pretty ridge trail, I noticed the area was unusually quiet. I mean, there was no breeze, no birds chirping, not even any bugs flying. Where the pretty ridge trail intersects with the Kiner Hollow, there is the remains of an old barn circa 1900s and a small creek. So you have water and there are boulders in that creek, which are in many of the disappearances listed in your books. I rode and hiked Kiner Hollow Trail and made it up to the Pretty Ridge, Indian Pipes Trail. It's a loop. And when I got back on top of the ridge, the sounds of summer came back. Birds chirping, a little breeze was blowing, bugs in the air. It was almost as if the atmosphere had changed. The area in Kiner Hollow felt very similar to a haunted house tour my wife and I did some years ago in Savannah, Georgia. The air felt heavy in Kiner Hollow. It never felt like I was being watched or was any kind of danger, but I did go back there in July of this year and it was quiet down in the hollow, but not like it was in September 2020. Seems like I never have seen any wildlife, people, or hear any birds now that I think about it. I've been in the area many times through the years, Dave, mostly in the winter. This area very close to where Summer Wells went missing in June 15th of this year, in the Beach Creek area just a few miles away. You covered that disappearance. Coincidence? Please feel free to respond to me if you have any questions or feel like you want more information. So Kingsport, Tennessee is located right near the Kentucky border, and just east of there, where this guy was, is where that little girl disappeared. And there's that same mountain range that goes all the way down to Great Smoky Mountain National Park, where there's been a lot of disappearances on that mountain range. A lot. And, unfortunately, the cute little girl has never been found. Next mail. Dave, just have to vent because I know the topic is of some interest to you. It deals with the lame, ineffectual, and often laughable claims the media frequently perpetrates on the public. My case in point is still over concern of what killed the Goehrs family and their dog this past summer. Apparently, the official news claims they all died from dehydration due to heat exhaustion and lack of water. Who are they kidding? It's like you said, usually not everyone dies at the exact same time, including the dog. Surely, if they were in danger of running out of water, they would have terminated their hike at some point of realization and headed back to salvation. It wasn't like they were trapped in an oven. It seems the media has a really hard time admitting they just don't know. Why can't they say that? Yeah, the circumstances are very odd and very out of the ordinary, and given all the evidence, we still have no clue as to what killed the family and their dog. Unfortunately, so it remains. Well, the official claim is that they died of heat, and they all dropped, including the dog, within 30 feet of each other. What can I say? It's very odd. I've never heard of it. It's as though they feel that if they can't come up with a reason or explanation, or somehow they're just unworthy of their duty. As for the authorities, it seems often they just need an excuse to close the books on a matter. That's true. As for the pervasive lies by government that have often plagued the UFO phenomenon, back in the late 60s, near where I live in southwestern Ontario, during the great Michigan UFO flap, I recall there were multiple reports in local newspapers that people were claiming that strange lights and objects were being seen during a period of weeks over a boggy creek in a somewhat rural area. My dad even saw one when he was driving home one night, and he never lies. He said it flew by him in the field and it wasn't an airplane, especially speeding only 10 feet off the ground. I didn't pay too much attention to the news reports then because I was young, but now when I look back on it, it infuriates me that the editors of the paper made the usual ridiculous claims that the mysterious culprit was swamp gas. I still pass this area now many times during the month in all kinds of weather, and I have never, ever seen any condition that could be construed as swamp gas, whatever that is. It is a huge insult to the public's intelligence for the media to hide the real or suspected truth. Treat people as if they're ignorant and flatly deny any claims other than the ones they fabricate to serve their own agenda. Anyways, thanks for going over your strange events while out in the wild. It's obviously human nature to have odd, inexplicable, surreal events stick unforgettably in one's mind. I think that in itself is justifiable reason to acknowledge that without doubt, it absolutely did occur in reality. In my mind, in these cases, doubters are gladly excluded with their opinions. Thanks again, Dave, as always. Now, somebody sent me the next story, missing person, and I'm glad they did. And I encourage other people who adamantly follow our work and understand the profile points to send us stories from other countries. I'm always interested in these. And as I've always stated, this is a worldwide phenomenon, not a North American issue. This happened in Taiwan. Kind of timely, since the Chinese want to invade Taiwan. Hiker missing for 2 weeks in central Taiwan. The man's surname was Lee, and he was 52 years old. He's been missing since November 24th. He was hiking with a group when he felt sick and he didn't feel right. And he left his hiking group to turn back alone. Sound familiar? The group had embarked on a 10-day trip to traverse a section of the Central Mountain Range, the most arduous alpine hiking routes in Taiwan. They started from the Ruisi Forest Road in Hualien, Hualien County, November 23rd. This is interesting to me because this is a map of Taiwan, the island. This is where they started, and this is the mountain range that we're talking about that was real tough. And right next to this is the Yushan National Park. It's amazing how many people disappear near, in, or around national parks in other countries around the world. Why is that? It's fascinating. Just by chance, it was right next to the national park. He might have been in the national park when he disappeared. We don't know. But the article says on the second day, he felt under the weather and decided to discontinue. He turned back at the kilometer 31 marker Forest Road by himself. Several days later, his hiking group went back to look for him, didn't find him, and they called for the fire department, which apparently runs a search and rescue in this area. They searched for him, mountaineering groups went in, and several had to depart here, and it says in the article, due to cold weather conditions. The family contacted a mountaineer from another country who came over to help. It says that they left no stone unturned, and they didn't find him. The family has posted a reward on Facebook. Friends have raised $300,000, US $10,819 for anyone who could locate him. He was dressed in blue outer garment with bright blue purple backpack. Friends. I mean, come on. It's happening all over the world. And I can keep talking about it, and I hope it keeps sinking in. And we got to get other countries understanding that this can happen in their area. Just in the last year, I think I probably covered disappearances in 10 countries. So, just another one. Hope the man's found, but I think they've given up the search for him. So, first case I'm going to talk to you about was a man from Germany, came to America, and he settled in a town in Fairfield, Iowa. His name was Henry Goehrs, Goehrs. He went missing October 1st, 1906. Some articles said November 1st, 1906, but it looks like it was October. He immigrated legally from Germany to Iowa, had a farm, and he opened a business there. And he did well. And he had $5,000 in assets that he kept in a bank in Iowa when he moved from there to Portland, Oregon. And he wanted to be near the coast, started a new business, and he had friends in Portland and in that area. And he started that new business and was doing well. He was staying with a family just northwest of Portland, and it was called the Dippold, D-I-P-P-O-L-D family. And he had gone up there to stay with them because he wanted to hunt the area just off the Columbia River. So on October 1st, he and Mr. Dippold went out hunting, and during that day hunt, they got separated. And guess what happened next? That's right, huge storm comes in, and Mr. Dippold said that he had to take cover for many hours because it was such a bad storm. Very late that day, Mr. Dippold makes it back to his residence, and he can't find Henry. And none of the articles about this said how old Henry was. But the next day, because it was so late when Mr. Dippold got back, he called the sheriff, sheriff organized a comprehensive search. So Henry's residence was in Portland. This is the Columbia River. They were hunting this area. And I put this up here because I have to. At the end of January, I'm going to be at a conference in Longview, Washington. I was there last year, and I got invited back. It's at the end of January. So if you want to see me, you can look it up on our website. There's some details about it. And I'll put the link on this video for you. But the sheriff searched this area for a week. And other articles said that it was an extremely comprehensive search. And at the end of it, the sheriff did an about face and ended up arresting Mr. Dippold for murder. I read these things like 3 or 4 times, and I couldn't believe the sheriff arrested him for murder because I couldn't see any evidence. Well, a couple weeks later, Henry's relatives in Germany had heard about his disappearance. And they hired a law firm in the West Coast to look into the case, and they sent investigators to Portland. And they wrote up that they didn't understand why Mr. Dippold was charged with a crime. And he went to a preliminary hearing, and all of the criminal aspects of the case was dropped. Well, then there were subsequent searches for Henry in the area where he disappeared. He was never found. So when I looked at this, I said to myself, this is a classic case of what I write about. Point of separation. They're near a big body of water, the Columbia River. They get separated. Weather inundates the scene. It's classic. And he's German. The family did go back and collect the $5,000 in assets from Iowa. They also collected more assets in Portland. It sounded like the family in Germany was very well off as well, but didn't explain that. But to hire a firm to do what they did in finding him cost money. But Henry Goehrs, an age was never listed for him, so I didn't know, but never found. Very unusual case, to say the least. Now, I'm going to fast forward several years into an area that I know very well. And that's the region east of Roseburg, Oregon. Gorgeous mountains, the Cascades. Joseph Rohrer, 68 years old, missing October 11th, 1920. He and his family lived in Canton, Ohio, but they wanted to come out west and spend what they considered to be a mild winter in Roseburg. Well, they had friends and family living in the area, and Joseph was an experienced hunter, and he and 3 family friends went to an area about 11 miles east of the Wolf Creek Ranger Station, which is about 30 miles northwest of Crater Lake. Now, if you remember, that area, starting at Crater Lake and going north, is a cluster zone. And that area of the Cascades has so many people that are missing. It's bizarre. And just a reminder, if you've never been to Crater Lake, you should go. But the Native Americans in the early days, they wouldn't go to Crater Lake. They said it was a bad, evil location, and none of the tribal members from the multitude of tribes in that area would ever go anywhere near it. And when I started to write the books about missing people, there were people missing there from many, many years ago, all the way up till today. So, anyhow, Joseph went out with his 3 buddies. They're hunting, and they separate to hunt. They meet back at this cabin. Everybody meets back except Joseph. So they go back to the ranger station and they get a ranger named Mr. Hauser. And he was in charge of all searches. And right away there were some dog canine units that they could get. And the article said that Ranger Hauser gave a scent to the dogs and they couldn't pick up any scent trail of Mr. Rohrer. That's odd. And then there were also other articles that said that snow inundated the area and inhibited the search efforts. Sounds familiar. So they searched for a week, they never found him, and Mrs. Rohr posted a $200 reward for her husband, dead or alive. At about the time that was posted in the local news, a cattleman reported hearing 4 shots go off in an area just on the perimeter where Joseph disappeared. So searchers went back in. In total, there were 3 weeks committed to searching. Now let me stop here for a second. 3 shots in fairly rapid succession to hunters means it's an emergency and somebody needs help. 4 shots I've never heard of. And being a hunter, I don't understand why somebody would ever fire 4 shots. Unless their life was in danger from something. Now up here in Montana, it'd be hard to get off 4 shots at something coming at you rapidly. 3, maybe I could, but 4 would be tough. But, so Joseph never found. He was in the Cascade Range where there's many people missing. He's in a cluster zone. It's almost continuous all the way from Crater Lake. He was a hunter. Canines couldn't pick up a scent. And last but not least, weather inhibited the search. So what you got here is you got Crater Lake National Park. Just north of that, you have Diamond Lake, Mount Thielsen. This drive up Highway 62 and around here is absolutely pristinely beautiful. They were hunting this area of the Umpqua National Forest. They were just east of a city called Peel. This is a real small city. This is Roseburg, Oregon, right here. This region of the forest is really thick and really rugged and awesomely gorgeous. There's a road where you can, this is a road that goes into Crater Lake, a little road that goes absolutely right to the crater's edge. And then there's a road that goes partially around the rim of the lake. When you get to Crater Lake, the water here is just absolutely pristinely clean and beautiful. I'm going to encourage you to go there. In the end, Joseph was never found. And it just adds to the uniqueness of the Oregon Cascades. And really this chain starts south of Mount Shasta in California, this chain of missing people. So it doesn't surprise me, but it does put it in this bucket that historically, it goes back way over 100 years that this has been going on. My guess is if there was adequate reporting, I could probably find these into the 1700s. But it's hard to find that in newspapers going back that far. Next story, Mount Rainier National Park. A huge cluster of missing people. I've talked to you about many disappearances there already. Every once in a while, someone will ask me, Dave, are there any national park rangers that have disappeared? Well, yeah, there have. There aren't a lot, but there's a few. One of those national park rangers we're going to talk about right now, David Taylor, 23 years old. He was missing November 18th, 1974. David was in phenomenal shape, and he was an expert mountain climber. And Mount Rainier has an alpine rescue team of rangers, several of them, that are some of the best climbers in the world. And when you're dealing with a mountain that's over 14,000 feet tall, you need those people. And as I've stated many times, I don't like writing about climbers that disappear, because it's too easy to rationalize that in your mind that, oh, they had a climbing accident and he died. So what? Except Mount Rainier's different. And I've already talked to you about one climber who disappeared on Mount Rainier. He was on belay, meaning he was on rope, on a carabiner, getting led up a mountain by somebody else who's above him, and all of a sudden the rope goes limp and he's gone. Yeah, never found. This is another one of those weird stories. So November 18th, he and a friend are climbing up, and they start off in an area near Longmire, Washington. Pretty common. And they start at the western base, and he was with a friend called Carl Fabiani, honing their skills. And I mean, this, when you want to be on a rescue team like that, you got to be always honing your skills. So that's what they were doing. And they made their way up the mountain to a place called Success Cleaver. And map the route here for you. It's a picture of Rainier. Now the Cleaver is like a ridge, a volcanic ridge that goes up to the summit. It's kind of dangerous, obviously, but there's only a few ways to easily get up Rainier. This isn't exactly easy, and it can be very dangerous. So David and Carl are making their way up, and suddenly they go into whiteout conditions. It never said whether Carl or David had checked the weather before they left, but being experts on Rainier, I have to guess that they did. So suddenly they're in whiteout conditions, and Carl says that he and David got separated. He said that he huddled up for like 30, 40 minutes waiting for this to blow over, and it didn't. And he's calling out for David, and he's not getting anything. So then he decides to start going out on his own looking for his partner, and he can't find him. And the weather keeps getting worse and worse. So they were at about 9,500 feet, one article said, on the way to 14,400 at the summit. And he stated that he made his way down to the forest as fast as he could, and he ends up in the forest walking through, trying to find his way out. So he does. And he gets his way into town, calls for help. Now this is the official National Park Service map that they hand out for Rainier. This is, if you're going into Rainier and you want to get to the base of the mountain, this is the town called, or location called Paradise. Longmire is right down here. This is Success Cleaver. I'll pull it in real close for you. It's that ridge line I showed you that goes to the summit. So when Carl came out, he came out down through here, and he's made his way through the woods and down into town. Got help. So the National Park Service sends 2 rescue teams in. And the same way that I think that there's bonds within sports teams and firefighters and such, there's bonds, strong bonds between climbers. And when they hear a climber's missing, they all get together and they help. And these are some heroic efforts to try to find David. They sent 2 teams in, one right after the other, and they were both hit with tremendous winds, snow, blistering conditions. They couldn't find anything. So they came back down. Weeks later and months later, multiple teams went back into that area trying to find David. Carl gave multiple interviews where he said things like, David had to have fallen. He had to have fallen. The point being is he was so adamant that he was unsure what really happened up there. Because there was never any adequate explanation of what happened to David Taylor. Well, Carl didn't fall. And they had the point of separation. I've told you 2 stories today where 2 different people, under different circumstances, had the world around them change as they were walking down a trail. Now, as you're walking on a trail, unless the trail is absolutely flat, you're getting elevation changes. But when you're climbing a mountain as rapidly as David and Carl were climbing Rainier, elevation changes rapidly. I like to think outside the box because we're never going to solve anything unless we do. So does elevation have something to do with this atmospheric change that people describe of the weather being heavy? Well, in Carl and David's incident, the weather changed drastically to the point that you really couldn't function. And the only thing you could do to save your life would be to get down, which is what Carl did. And I don't blame him at all for leaving. He had to save his own life. But I was stunned to see how many times Carl said David had to have fallen. He had to have. I get that. Now, David has never been found. And I got upset because I read some reports and he said he died of blunt force trauma, that he fell. But he's never been found. And it says he's presumed dead. They don't know. Now, if he's still on the mountain, he's dead. Through weather conditions, he can't live that long on that mountain. But we really don't know where David went. And when you look at the totality of what I've talked to you about for the last year, and the other strange disappearances that have happened on that mountain just in the last year, what's going on? Nobody wants to address it. And if I get into the right circles and I discuss what I just discussed with you, I'd be called a kook, even for bringing this up. And they would try to demean me so other people wouldn't listen to what I had to say. Even though I might be one of the most rational people amongst us, that's what the demeaning nature of this is. And that's why, as a community, as a village, we need to support each other. Whether that's about losing a loved one, whether it's about a belief system, and whether it's about just delivering facts. Because sometimes the facts are scarier than fiction. Well, I gave you 4 cases today. A case out of Taiwan, a case out of Oregon, 2 cases out of Oregon, and a case out of Washington. This is one of the unusual days where we have 3 cases out of the United States. And all 3 were never found. It's pretty odd. And where are these people? We don't know. So if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please spread it out. If you want to contact me and you want to keep up to me daily, you can follow me on Twitter at David Paulides at canammissing. Website canammissing.com, like Canadian American missing.com. And website, it'll be listed under the pinned comment under the description of the video. And also our documentaries, Missing 411, other documentary, Missing 411 The Hunted, available to watch free. I think they're on Hulu now. Watch them on Amazon. It could cost you like $2 to watch them on Amazon. Or you can watch them on YouTube Movies. I think one of them is on there still. In the meantime, do me a favor. Do one thing nice today for somebody, whatever that might be. Call a loved one you haven't talked to in a while. Let them know that you still care about them. If you're at the store, you're out shopping, hold a door for someone, say something nice to somebody. But anyhow, thank you for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you. Paulides out.